have this gospel that is really familiar to probably all of us. The Gadarene demoniac and Jesus going opposite Galilee to where he was. So on the boat across the lake and going to where this demoniac is from St. Luke's gospel, and all the things that happened with this man, and especially this Jesus asking what his name is. What is your name? Speaking to whatever was controlling him. And the answer was legion. Many. Not just one. Not just greed or some other demon or some other passion or some weird name or whatever. They answered, we're just thousands. And because Jesus had been saying, you need to leave him alone, or he'd come out of him. And they make a deal with Jesus about the pigs. The swine go in and drown in the lake there, down the cliff and into the lake. And then we find the man, it says in the gospel, in his right mind. It's very specific. It doesn't say then everything was perfect or whatever, but it says he was clothed because he had been naked. And then he's in his right mind because he had not been in his right mind before. And then the people were afraid because nothing like this could happen, that you could go from being insane to sane with an encounter with Christ. It had not happened before. Those are the crazy people. That guy lives over there in the tombs. We're these people. Jesus does tricks, but this is beyond tricks. This is beyond fish multiplying and all this kind of stuff. This is something new. It's not tricks that Jesus does. They just look like tricks, right? This is something new. That a man who was out of his mind can have his mind restored is something new. Now, we don't want to be those who give the demons too much credit. Jesus certainly has defeated the devil at the cross, the resurrection, and the ascension. They're not omnipotent. They don't know everything. They aren't everywhere present. They're not gods, fallen angels. The devil is no god. And really pretty sad and pitiful, but not without power. It always makes me nervous, by the way, when someone says anything about demons or wants to kind of talk about it a lot. I don't know if you've ever met someone like that. The devil did this and the devil did that. Immediately I'm like, ugh, enough with the talk about the devil. Enough with the talk about demons. Let's not give them any more credit than they have coming to them. Let's not go there. And then we have a gospel like this, and we need to consider something. That when we feel those moments of insanity, whether it be from anger that gets out of control, or lust, or whatever that gets out of control. It's always out of control, but when we lose total control, we have to consider this gospel. We have to consider that we're not in our right minds, and the return to sanity is very much a return to sanctity. There's very much a return to something being restored right with God when we've lost it. And there's just as many passions as people probably in the room. There's some big ones that get a lot of us, anger and greed and other things, sex stuff. But there's lots of demonic kind of energy and demons themselves that are after us in a way. They don't have the power to take us. But if we open the door, they come in. They don't stand outside saying, well, ask again. We barely ask. We open the door a little bit. They'll get their foot in the door, and it's very hard to shut that door again. Shut the door, and you just have a harder time once it's open. And we need to come back to this gospel today. Because I don't know that there's anyone in here today who hasn't had some of that experience of anger getting too much, or whatever it is, getting too much, and feeling a little like we're not ourselves, like we're out of our minds even. Every time you read a story in the paper about the neighbor that goes nuts, literally goes crazy, all the neighbors around, when they're interviewed, like, how did this guy do this horrible crime? They're like, he was such a nice guy. I never saw this coming. It's like without fail. He was so nice. I said hello to him every day. I have no idea how this happened. It's like a very dramatic version of what we've all experienced in a small way, of like insanity, even if it's momentary. And Jesus restores this demoniac, and he's clothed and in his right mind. There is a spiritual truth, this connection between our minds being right and free from demonic influence. But that's like the same. We're able to kind of stand as we're meant to stand in the Lord. And we need to know that when we're coming up against these things that come up against us, it's not just nothing that's coming up against us. And we need the Lord, and he can restore that. He can grant us that position that we have in him, made in his image and his likeness, that's so important to keep clear in our own heads. St. Paul will say, put on the mind of Christ. That's what St. Paul said. Put on the mind of Christ. Your own mind might be a little messed up. Put on the mind of Christ. Think like him. Look at things the way he did. Judge the way he judges, where he says he won't judge. Love the way he loves, which is sacrificially. Put on the mind of Christ. Stop seeing the way you've been seeing. See the way he sees. We can put on the mind of Christ. It's probably not something that happens in one fell swoop. It probably takes a little bit of time and effort, and to keep coming back to put on the mind of Christ. But if we decide to put on the mind of Christ, we have put on the mind of Christ. And we will grow more. The perspective we need to have is that we're made in the image and likeness of God. The image of God is who we are. Nothing can take it away. Nothing can change it. Not even insanity. Nothing can change that we're made in God's image. We are mirrors to reflect God's glory. And his glory shines all the time. Sometimes the mirror that we are to reflect God's glory gets dusty and becomes like a little less clear. It's tough to see the reflection and the glory of God. But the mirror is there, and the glory of God is there. What we sometimes need help with is dusting off the mirror. Some Windex, We need something to clean the mirror. And the Lord can help us with this. At the core of every human being, writes St. Gregory Nazianzus, is this amazing spark of divinity, created by God, put there by God, which nothing, not sin or death or the devil, can adversely affect. That's St. Gregory. At the core of every human being is this amazing spark of divinity, created by God, put there by God, which nothing, not even sin and death and the devil, can adversely affect. Fear distracts us from seeing it. The other passions distract us from seeing it, and they will actually get us to believe that it's not true. And so we're not so far in a way from the man in the gospel. We have to call on the Lord to heal us, and he will heal us of this. Fear is just as dastardly and demonic as anything else. And we can start listing them all. For some of us, it's not going to be legion. It's going to be one big thing that takes us out, that messes with us. We have to be able to know what that is and ask the Lord for his help. If he can restore this man, he can restore us. Because this guy was far gone. Naked and in the tombs. So we've got a worst case scenario. We know we're not as bad as this guy. We know it. I know we are not as bad as this guy. And that's good news, because he can heal us if he healed this guy. It ends with this sad warning, and every time I read it, I can't get past it, that the people asked Jesus to leave. It is a sad ending to this story. He closed this guy. The guy's in his right mind. That's when the people are afraid, and they tell Jesus to leave, and he leaves. The story begins with him getting out of the boat on dry land. He just got there. The luggage is still on the boat, He hasn't checked into his hotel or whatever. He has just arrived. He's at the dock. Stepped on the dock. All of this happens. They say, go back wherever you came from. And he leaves them. Because he will not argue his way in. He will not hire a marketing campaign and make us believe him or whatever, buy billboards or whatever. He's gentle, and he comes and says, peace be with you. And if we say, no thanks, go away, he will not, tie us down to the chair and beat us till we believe him. He's gentle and kind. And we've got to welcome that gentleness and kindness of the Lord and not push him away. There is nothing that stands in the way. Nothing that stands in the way of the Lord's love for us. Not sin, not death, and not the devil. Nothing stands in the way of the Lord's love for us. The only thing that can send him away is us. We're the only ones who have that kind of power. Nothing else has that kind of power. We don't want by any of our actions, by any of our thoughts, even our past or whatever, to say to the Lord, we'd rather have this than you. So it's a singleness of mind, that mind of Christ. If we can put on the mind of Christ, it's a singleness that only looks to God for help. And he will help us. We are not separated from the Lord. The devil wants us to believe that we've somehow gotten too far for God to heal us. But if God can heal this guy, he can heal us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.